that it was the work and the responsibility of Napoleon to pour out judgments upon the beast, and that Revelation 16 is largely the story of the work of the vials, that the beast system of Europe might be judged. In fact, we might say that the beast came to an end with the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire, which occurred in what year? Anyone know what year it was? 1806, absolutely correct. On the 6th of August, to be precise, if I remember correctly, because on that day the emperor abdicated his title as Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, and one could truly say that in a sense the beast system had come to an end at that time, 1800. And yet the remarkable thing is that the Bible, and particularly the book of Revelation, clearly tells us that there will be a beast system at the time of the end. So here are the references. The Bible requires a latter-day beast. Revelation chapter 14 and verse 11 says, "And the smoke of their torment ascended up forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night who worship the beast and the image." But Revelation 14, brothers and sisters, is set at the time of the return of Christ and the preaching of the gospel to all the world, that they should fear God because his judgments are coming. And yet the beast is referred to in Revelation 14. In Revelation 15 it says, "I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that have gotten victory over the beast and over his image." But Revelation 15 is the song of the redeemed at the time of the end. In Revelation chapter 16, it says, "I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, and they gather all together to the battle of Armageddon." But that's the time of the end, brothers and sisters. And yet Revelation 16 says there's a beast there at the time of the end. Revelation chapter 17 says, "These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome both them and the beast." But that's the time of the end, is it not? And finally, Revelation chapter 19 and verse 20 says, "And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet, and these were both cast alive into a lake of fire burning with brimstone." But Revelation 19 is about the Lord Jesus Christ riding forth with his armies to do judgment upon the nations. But there's a beast alive, says Revelation chapter 19. So there's going to be a revival of the beast system at the time of the end. Now, where was that beast, brothers and sisters, in ancient times? And the answer is, well, it's a Japhethite beast. It dwells in Europe. It's lived in Europe all its life. Now, you notice that none of those passages tell us whether the final form of the beast is the beast of the sea or the beast of the earth. What thinkest thou? Which one do you think it might be, brothers and sisters, at the time of the end? Well, I'm going to suggest to you today that I think quite possibly it's going to be both. And I'll tell you why. If you just come to Revelation chapter 16 and verse 13. So this is one of these references that we've had to the latter-day beast. Now, let me just take you back to an earlier overhead. Do you notice that Revelation 13 talks about 4 powers? I'm going to ignore the dragon just for a moment, because the dragon is a separate story. Well, no, I'm going to speak about all 4. The beast of the earth, the beast of the sea, the dragon of the east, and the image of the beast. Now, do you notice that those 4 symbols in Revelation chapter 13 become just 3 symbols in Revelation 16? Because Revelation 16 says in verse 13, "And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet." Only 3. 4 symbols in Revelation 13 become only 3 symbols in Revelation 16. So the answer is, of course, what symbols answer to what in these 2 respective chapters? Well, the first one's quite easy, because is there a dragon in chapter 13? Yes. Is there a dragon in chapter 16, verse 13? Yes. So the dragon answers to the dragon. Why, yes. I think we can safely assume that to be the case. Now, the image of the beast of Revelation chapter 13 We believe that there is very good evidence for suggesting that that is the false prophet of Revelation 16. In fact, one of the things that ought to be noted concerning interpretations as to who or what the false prophet of Revelation chapter 16 might be is that whoever the false prophet is of Revelation 16, he was once the image of the beast of Revelation 13, and you need to explain the difference between the two and why his name has changed. Why does the image of the beast of Revelation 13 suddenly become the false prophet in chapter 16? Why the change of name? And why does his name change at the time of the vials? Whatever interpretation you might give to the false prophet, you must explain those questions. But I believe that the image of the beast of Revelation 13 answers to the false prophet of chapter 16 for certain excellent reasons that were outworked in the historical development. Now, what does that leave us in Revelation 16? Answer: just the beast. So what must that relate to of Revelation chapter 13? And I think the answer is the beast of the sea and the beast of the earth, all rolled into one, brothers and sisters, at the time of the end. That the revival of the beast system at the time of the end of Revelation 16 answers to both the beasts of Revelation chapter 13. And if it is to be both, then it must include not only France and Germany, but they must be at the very heart of the system, because they were at the center of the respective beasts of earlier days. The beast of the sea was France, the beast of the earth was Germany. If the latter-day beast is a combination of those two, then we expect to see France and Germany at the very heart of the story in the latter days. What's interesting about that is that, do you know that 150 years ago we would have deemed that to be quite impossible? That France and Germany would collaborate together as a system of the revival of the beast in the latter days. 150 years ago. Where were we 150 years ago in history? Well, around about 1850, halfway through the 1800s. France and Germany were bitter rivals in those days. They were at war. 1870 was the Franco-Prussian War. There was tremendous conflict between France and Germany 150 years ago, brothers and sisters. You never would have imagined that it would be possible that France and Germany would be at the center of a revived beast in the latter days. But Christadelphian writers said so 150 years ago, when all appearances of the day were quite contrary to that conclusion. And of course it was said so, brothers and sisters, simply because the Bible indicated it to be so in Revelation chapter 16. I think that the possibility of a Franco-German beast was impossible 100 years ago. In fact, I think it was most unlikely 50 years ago. Where were we 50 years ago? Emerging from the horrors of World War II. Did World War II involve the conflict of France and Germany? Oh, yes. And yet the beast of the latter days, we believe, will be not only a European beast, but was to involve those two particular powers. Of course, the remarkable thing is that around about 50 years ago, a new force arose that began to confederate Europe. So after World War II, this is the face of modern Europe. It wasn't going to be Hitler, it wasn't going to be Napoleon, it wasn't going to be Bismarck that would be able to confederate Europe together at the time of the end. So what force, what mighty force arose that would bind Europe, and particularly France and Germany together, that there might be a latter-day beast? And the answer is, well, of course, surprisingly, the most unlikely of things. It all began with a little organization called the European... Now, can anyone tell me what it was? Be careful now. The very first bringing together, the European Coal and Steel Commission. Absolutely right. What was the European Coal and Steel Commission all about? And the answer was that because Germany had plunged Europe into war so many times, France said that Germany ought not to have control over the coal and steel resources of Europe with which they could build armaments to plunge Europe into war ever again. So France said, we shall own these resources jointly together. The resources, the industrial and Saar basins. And the European Coal and Steel Commission was established that they might combine those industries together, an alliance of France and Germany, so that there might not be war in Europe again. Well, you'll probably know, brothers and sisters, that what transpired after that was the Treaty of Rome in 1957 with its 6 founding state members, including France and Germany. But today I want to take you through another piece of legislation that I personally think has been crucial to the development of the beast in the time of the end. And it's this one here. Well, I'd like to tell me what they think it is. A piece of legislation that was signed on the 22nd of January 1963. The 40th anniversary of this treaty was celebrated exactly 1 month ago today. And there were celebrations. And there were celebrations in 2 places concerning the signing of this treaty. It's called the Franco-German Friendship Treaty. It was signed on the 22nd of January 1963 by President de Gaulle and by Chancellor Adenauer. And they signed that treaty, brothers and sisters, to try and pledge that France and Germany would work together and that the enmities of the past which had divided them would be put aside forever. You know how old de Gaulle was in 1963 when he signed the treaty? He was 73. Pretty good guess. He was 73 when he signed. You know how old Chancellor Adenauer was? He was 87. Yeah, pretty good. These 2 old men, if you'll pardon that expression, brothers and sisters, because I say so with the greatest of respect, these 2, shall I say, senior statesmen sat down and signed a document together, and after they signed the treaty, they stood up and they embraced one another and they wept. And that treaty, I believe, has been one of the most important pieces of legislation that has governed the future of Europe for the last 40 years. Do you know that in that same year, just a short time later on, the Pope issued one of his most significant encyclicals entitled Pacem in Terris, Peace on Earth? France and Germany had just signed a friendship treaty together. Well, let me tell you what that treaty does. Well, you can see from the chart here, it laid the framework for an unprecedented level of cooperation between the 2 powers. And since the treaty was begun, the terms and provisions of this document have been greatly increased and strengthened. So the heads of state of these 2 powers, France and Germany, meet together twice a year at an official summit conference. The foreign ministers meet 4 times a year. The defense ministers meet 4 times a year. But foreign ministry officials meet every month in order to prepare for those summit conferences. There is a Defense and Security Council. There is an Economic and Financial Council. There is an Environmental Council. There is a Cultural Council. There's a tremendous amount of cooperation has gone on between France and Germany as a result of the signing of this treaty. And a set of remarkable friendships has developed between the heads of state. What we do know, brothers and sisters, is that for the last 40 years, that treaty has proven to be highly resilient to leadership changes. Some of the most remarkable friendships have been Konrad Adenauer and Charles de Gaulle, who signed the document, who turned out to be good friends in the process. Chancellor Helmut Schmidt and Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, who was the president of France of the time. Chancellor Helmut Kohl and François Mitterrand. And now Gerhard Schröder and Jacques Chirac, unlikely bedfellows, unlikely political companions, brothers and sisters, and yet they have cooperated together under the terms of this treaty in a remarkable way. I think perhaps we don't realise just how extensive it is.